Today, I want to look at some of the lies that people believe that keep them stuck in very unhealthy situations, keep them stuck in unhealthy relationships, abusive relationships, toxic, codependent relationships. Early on in my career in this field, I remember having clients who came to me for counseling because they were in abusive relationships, or they were in a relationship with a narcissist and it was very controlling. Gaslighting was happening. It was very toxic. And as I talked with them, tried to get them to see that they needed to leave the relationship. And what came out of their mouth was all the reasons why they couldn't leave the relationship, why they had to stay in the relationship. And what I began to realize is they're believing a whole bunch of lies. And those lies are causing them to remain in prison in an abusive, toxic relationship. And so I want to just itemize today some of the lies that many people believe without even realizing it that keep them in prison in abusive, unhealthy relationships. So, lie number one, the neglect and abuse that I'm experiencing today, well, that's not the real them. They're just having a bad day. The real them that I fell in love with is the person that I saw at the very beginning of the relationship. They were so kind and attentive and giving and understanding. They were wonderful people. That's the real them. So please be willing to start looking at this not in your limbic brain, not out of what you hope, but at the facts, and what the facts about how relationships work and develop as well. The first truth that I want you to understand is if there's a difference between the person you saw at the beginning of the relationship and the person you see today, the person you see today is more likely the true person. And I say that because most people at the very beginning of the relationship put their best foot forward. They put on a mask. They only show you pleasant things, kind things, happy things. They're not fully authentic. The person you see today is a person who's letting you see all of them. So what makes it really easy to do that for people is to put their best foot forward, to only let you see the parts of them that are good, that they want you to see, is that much of dating today takes place in a fake environment where you can kind of control the environment and there's no stress there. It's very laid back. It's lots of time is given. And so you can let this person that you want them to see come out. But that leads to the second truth, and that is you see a person's true character, who they really are, when they're under stress. So over time, watch them under stress, watch them when they're tired, watch them when they're conflict, when they're angry. That's when you begin to see the real person. A person in a fake environment where there's zero stress, where they're rested, everything's going well, there's no conflict, that can easily be a fake person. Yeah, it could be a true person, but you're not sure because you're not going to see the true person until you see them tired, angry, under stress. So there's another piece that I want you to be aware of here. What happens with many people who put their best foot forward, but it's fake? And you fall in love with that fake person, and then you begin to see the true person, but you go, no, that can't be them, because this is the true person. They're just having a bad day. What can happen is that you get all upset, and the person knows that you're thinking maybe leaving, or you're thinking this relationship isn't working. So all of a sudden they can switch back to being a fake person again, super kind, etc. And you go, see, that proves that's the fake them. They were just having a bad day. This is the real them. So what I want you to understand is that over time, their inclination to go back to being fake, to being this sweet, kind, loving person, their inclination is less and less and less, and it happens less and less frequently. So you see fewer and fewer times of this what you thought was the real them showing up, and you see more and more times of what you thought was the fake them showing up, but is really the real them. I want you to understand that this real them, which is controlling, narcissistic, cruel, whatever, they may have the potential to be a wonderful person. The problem is what they've learned is they're not nice because they want to be nice and change. They're nice because it gets them what they want. It reinforces their total self-centeredness and narcissism. And so they're so maladapted that now they're using nice stuff, not from a genuine place of love, but from a place of manipulation. And so even the nice stuff is tainted by a bad motive. I want you to see that. There's another truth. Even if a person, so a healthy person, even if they're having a bad day, they will still live by certain morals, boundaries, by love. Even though they're having a bad day, they're not going to turn disrespectful, hurtful. They're going to continue to be patient. They're going to bite their tongue when they want to say something cruel. So a healthy person can have bad days. We all have bad days. But they never turn to abuse. It's one thing to have a bad day, but when abusiveness becomes the norm and it's excused because I'm having a bad day, no, that is no longer right. Because a healthy person, even when they're having a bad day, doesn't go to abuse. They still live within the boundaries of love. There's a second lie that's very common, and it's, even though I abuse you or I neglect you or try to control you, I really love you. That's the bottom line. I love you so much. That's partly why I'm so controlling. That's partly why I try to control everything you do and get really upset with you because I love you so much. So they're trying to say all of this stuff I'm doing is because my love is so passionate and so deep. The truth is, it's really their shame that is driving them. It's not love at all, but that's how they've framed the picture. So let me take it further to some truths that are so important. True love goes beyond just feelings. So what they're basically saying is, I love you so much, is I have these warm feelings to you. I get this chemistry, this intense feeling towards you. That's what love is. And no, love is actions. Love goes beyond just a feeling to the right action. It has the behavior of love, which is respect, which is honesty, which is treating the other person as an equal, which is meeting their needs just as much as you want your needs met, which is accepting them for who they are, which is encourage them to be an autonomous self. That's what love is. It's not the feeling thing. The other thing that I think is so important to understand with this is, one way to evaluate a person who says they love you is, where do you fit in their priority list? So they say they love you, but do they love you as much as their mom? So if they had to choose between what mom wanted them to do and what you wanted to do, would mom win out? If they had to choose between their job and you, their friends and you, their sports and you, money and you, which would win out? And so it's one thing to say, I love you, but what does that mean? Does it mean I'm the highest priority, that I come before mom and dad, before friends, before job? How does that work? So to give you another example, I have heard over the years hundreds of single moms say, I love my children so much, but their children have been taken away from them. And they go, but I love them so much. Or I've dealt with men as drug addicts. I love my children so much, but yet they're in jail, they're in an addiction. And so what I want them to see is, yes, I don't deny. You have a deep, intense feeling for your children. You want the best for your children. But your children don't see that you love them. Your children see that you love drugs more than them. You love your friends who are unhealthy more than them. You are not willing to connect with them, to meet their needs, to be there for them, to put them in a place where I'm putting you ahead of my old lifestyle. I'm putting you ahead of my friends. That's what the issue is. Lie number 3. A one-sided relationship is how you prove your love for me. So this is where an abusive person will say, you're not loving me enough. And so I'm mad at you. You should be doing more for me. You didn't meet my needs. You weren't there for me. You didn't spend time with me. So they're like a pouty little 2-year-old that's saying, unless I get everything that I want when I want, and you are prepared to run around and serve me, then you don't love me. And so what that then looks like is you make all the sacrifices, all the compromises, they never do. You put all your needs aside. It's only about their needs. You can't have any other relationships and friends. They can be the only relationship in your life. And so they go, see, that proves that you love me. You gave up your friends. You gave up your needs. You make sacrifices. That proves you love me. And so if I'm not happy, well then, see, that makes sense that you have something that you love more than me. So you don't really love me. You are selfish. You don't love me enough. But what's the truth? Healthy love, healthy relationships, it goes both ways. I meet your needs, you meet my needs. I sacrifice, you sacrifice. Works out to about 50%. It's not me making all the sacrifices and you making none. It's not all about your needs and I put my needs aside. It goes both ways. It has to be 50-50. So a consistently lopsided relationship where one person is doing all the sacrificing and giving up their needs, that will never be healthy. That will always end in pain. That's just the fact. You can have all the feelings you want, but that's the reality. So, a third truth. True love, yes, makes sacrifices at times, but it also sets boundaries. True love says, I'm going to make sacrifices, but you better make sacrifices. I am going to do stuff for you, but only if it's stuff that you can't do for yourself. I'm not going to do stuff for you that you can do for yourself. I'm going to put a boundary there. You have to be responsible, not just me. We both got to be responsible. And I'm going to confront anything in the relationship that is getting in the way of us being unhealthy. Any behaviors, any attitudes that are hurting us. So manipulation, lying, lack of communication. I'm going to set boundaries around that because I care that this relationship be healthy. So to stand up for what is healthy and to say no to what is unhealthy is not being unloving. It is being loving. Lie number 4, and this is another sadly common one. I know what's best for you. That's why you should let me make decisions. That's why you should listen to me. That's why you should let me control you. That's why you should conform to my thinking, to what I want, to my decisions. You should let me be totally in control because I know what's best for you. Now, this can be tricky because there is an element in a relationship where if you know a person well, you do know at times what is best for them. But the key is that I never force them to do what's best for them. They are still a person with free will, an autonomous person. I can have a discussion with them about what I think might be best for them, but now it's up to them to decide what they want to do. But what I have found is that people from complex trauma are very susceptible, vulnerable to this logic that I know what's best for you. And that's because they were told that many times as parents. And parents basically gaslit them all the time that we know what's best for you, so you're not allowed to think, you're not allowed to listen to your gut, you just have to conform. That, they were gaslit with that their whole life, and they believed it. But more than that, they were trained not to think. They were trained not to challenge things. They were trained to kind of go to mindless obedience and to trust that everybody else would make decisions for them. For some, when they got to adult life, they said, no, I know what's best for me. I'm going to do it. And they've gone off, but they've made a bunch of bad decisions. And so all of a sudden they go, yeah, I guess I don't know what's best for me. My parents were right. Everybody is right. They know what's best for me, but I don't. And then they go even harder into believing that. Or they go into adult life and all of a sudden they have to make these decisions and they feel fear failure. And they go, oh, what happens if I make the wrong decision? Okay, I'll go back to people who think they know best for me and I'll get them to tell me what to do. So that way I won't fail. So there's a whole bunch of different layers to this that cause people to stay believing, I will just conform to somebody who tells me that they know best for me. But here's something you can think about. Let's say your partner says, I know what's best for you. And then they tell you what they want you to do. Apply this test. If you were to go to them when you're facing a decision and you say, I know what's best for you, how would they respond to that? How open would they be to you just making the decisions for them, or even to a discussion on the topic that is being discussed? How open are they to your input? Because if they're not open at all, you see there's a double standard here. There's a problem here. And so even if you went to them and they go, I know what's best for you, or you say, I know what's best for them, and then all of a sudden there's some conflict. If you were to say, okay, let's go to an objective third party, they can listen to both of us, and then they can help us see kind of what might be the best way. Would they even resist that? And so what I want you to see is this. When they say, I know what's best for you, they're not saying it because they care about you. They're saying it because they care about what they want. And they want you to just let them make the decisions so that they get what they want. I know what's best for you is actually an attempt to manipulate you, to get you to conform. And they're trying to put it into terms of love, that I want what's best for you, I know what's best for you. Really, they don't. They just want to get their way. So if you can't say the same thing to them, then that just makes very clear that they're using that term is all about control. It's not about love. It's about them trying to control. Let me take that further. What I've said is that most people coming with complex trauma have been gaslit to doubt their ability to think for themselves, listen to their gut. And so they're very vulnerable to other people saying, I know what's best for you, and letting people make decisions for them, and they just conform. A key part of recovery is learning to think for yourself, learning your own needs, learning what is best for you. So please do that. Lie number 5, and this again, an abusive partner would say, or a narcissist would say, if you are evaluating me, then you're being judgmental. So in other words, you're being bad because you can't be judgmental. So just notice up front, they're saying, if you evaluate me, you're being judgmental. Guess what they're doing? They're evaluating you and saying you're judgmental. So they're accusing you of the very thing that they're doing. That's what I want you to see up front. But here's kind of how this plays out. Let's say you're in a relationship with a narcissist and they're flirting, they're being lazy, they're spending all their free time with their friends, they're not connecting to you, not working on the relationship, they just want sex when they want it, and you're kind of frustrated and fed up. And so you go, hey, you spend more time with your friends with me, you flirt with all these women, and you call them on their stuff, and they go, hey, you're being judgmental. That's wrong. So the inherent lie is what they're really wanting you to believe, is that they can do whatever they want with impunity. You can never challenge them on it. You cannot hold them accountable. To do that would be judgmental. So similar lies to this that they use is If anything goes wrong, it's your fault. I can never be at fault. You can never call me on my stuff. Or if we really love each other, we will never argue or criticize each other. That's another way they try to say the same thing. So if we really loved each other, you would never call me on my stuff. So bottom line is, to get along, you have to go along with whatever I do. That's how this plays out. So again, another kind of discrepancy that comes out of all of this. So number one is they're evaluating you, but you can't evaluate them. Secondly, if you evaluate them and point out their good qualities, they don't mind that. So they're all for evaluation then. That's not being judgmental in their mind. But if you evaluate them honestly and point out where they're failing and not loving, well, now you're being judgmental. So again, there's two different types of distortions and double standards that play out in how they use this statement. So what I want people to realize is there's part of us that is constantly evaluating. The brain does that. It's healthy. I evaluate getting a new house, a job, getting a car. Why? To make sure it's good, to make sure it doesn't have a whole bunch of problems that I'm going to have to deal with. It's going to cause me a whole bunch of money. So I need to evaluate and scrutinize carefully before I make big decisions to make sure the decision is sound, is wise. I evaluate people in order to make sure they're safe. That's healthy. So healthy judging is seeing people accurately. It's all part of love. I want what is best for that person. I want to know the unhealthy behaviors that hurt the relationship, the healthy things that I want to encourage. So that's part of what every child does, is we seek safety. The brain seeks safety. So we evaluate and develop radars to tell us when things are unsafe. That is super healthy. But what then is unhealthy judging, being judgmental? There's only a part of evaluating that turns unhealthy and becomes judgmental. And that is where I assign a negative conclusion, even though the facts don't support it. I am basically determining something negative because I'm in a negative space. I'm irritable, I'm discontent. I want to then blame somebody else for that. I want to impugn somebody else's motives. Well, they did that because they are actually selfish or narcissistic or whatever. And so unhealthy judgmental, being judgmental in that sense, is I want to focus on the flaws in others. I don't want to see a person accurately. I want to see them negatively. And I'm going to go looking for negative even if I have to make it up. That's judgmental. That's a refusal to see people accurately. That is seeing people in a negative way because I'm not in a good place. And there's always an element with that where I then feel better than them. There's a pride, a self-righteous element to that where I feel superior. So it supposedly solves my shame. Now, if you were to take this and flip it, so if you were to confront your partner about their flirting and they go, you're being judgmental, then you back off. But if your partner would come and they would judge you and say, hey, you're wasting our money. You're spending too much time with friends. Your mom has too much power in your life. You need to cut her out. Now, there could be truth in that, but it could be a big lie. They're just trying to manipulate you to isolate you from things, to get more control over you. But yet so many people believe it. So if you were to give accurate criticism, you would be told you're judgmental. If they give you distorted criticism that's actually judgmental, you believe it. That is a huge issue for many people coming out of complex trauma. And so this is why, to me, in dating, Dating needs to be, I need to accurately see this person and evaluate them to know whether I should let this relationship continue or else whether I'm getting in with somebody very unhealthy and I need to get out of it. Also, I need to be looking for, do they see things accurately? Are they determined to see things accurately, or are they always distorting things a little bit? Because if they are, that's a huge red flag. They are eventually going to do that with me. That makes them an unsafe person. Here's another one that happens within relationships that are falling apart. And that is, if we have a baby, it will solve our problems. Now, on the surface, in the short term, it seems that that works. People have a baby, and all of a sudden their problems seem to go away because they're focused on the baby. They're in love with the baby. They've got all kinds of warm feelings towards the baby. They have extra motivation now to try hard to make the relationship work because there's a baby in the picture now. And so that works for a while. But in the long run, a baby actually just adds more stress to the relationship, which then brings all the other problems back in an even greater way. So that solution might provide a short-term bit of relief, but only makes things worse in the long run. Lie number 7, staying is easier than leaving, or staying is better than leaving. Now, I want to grant to everybody that says that, yeah, staying has some pros and cons. Leaving has some pros and cons. So both staying and leaving have a downside. What most people do is when they look at the pros and cons is they look at them only in their limbic brain in the short term. So if I stay, then I don't have to go looking for a job. Then I don't have to worry about being alone, all the responsibilities of the kids, etc., etc. It's easier just to conform. It's easier just to go along. Then I still get my meals, some money, all of that. And so it sounds like staying is good in the short term. But if you play the tape out to the end, what you begin to realize is the relationship gradually is going to get worse and worse. There's going to be more pain and more problems for the children. If you were to get out of it, yes, it would be hard for a while, but it would get a whole lot easier in a hurry. So don't just look at the short term. That is the key. Then another one I've heard so often is my husband or partner or wife, whatever, has started to become abusive verbally, emotionally, physically. All they need is more love. If they just had more love, then their anger would go away. All their bitterness would go away. That would just fix everything. They are such a hurting person. That's why they're so angry and so abusive. They just need more love, and I'm the only one who can love them. Now that sounds so good. It sounds even true to an extent. But here's what I want you to understand. An abuser will never change unless they take ownership for their behavior and they decide they are going to change. If you give them more love, they interpret that you're condoning what they're doing, that you're okay with this relationship, that you're conforming and letting them away with what they're doing. So more love actually enables them to stay abusers. It lets them stay these immature children. Yes, they need more love eventually, but they're not able to receive that right now because any attempts at love they receive and understand to be, you accept the way I am and condone it. So what they need is they have to get to a point where they're not getting any rewards. They're not getting any positives out of their lifestyle choices. They're only getting pain and negative consequences. People leaving, people cutting off friendships with them. Then they're going to be forced to look at the problem is me. Because up till now in their mind, they've been saying the problem is everybody else. And they've been blaming everybody. But it's only as the consequences pile up that they eventually get to a point of pain and get backed into a corner where they have to say, maybe it's me. Then they take ownership to change, and then part of the healing is they learn to receive love. But they have to give love to themselves. Then they have to get love in non-romantic ways. Then they're able to do deep, deep healing. But to just think that giving them love right now when they're still in the abusive thing is not going to solve the problem. That is so important to understand. Number 9, I made a commitment to this relationship, so I have to honor it. So even though I'm being abused, I got married and said, till death do us part, so I can't leave. So what is behind much of this is misuse of loyalty to faith-based ideas. So you get told God hates divorce, it's for better than worse. They don't tell you that God actually also divorced Israel. And so if God hates it, why did God then go do it? And if Jesus supposedly hated divorce, why did he endorse a divorce if a person refuses to change? So you begin to realize they're kind of cherry picking things that they want from their scriptures to support this idea that you got to stay in abusive relationships or God's going to be mad at you. So they're weaponizing the teachings and distorting them to support being trapped in abusive relationships. I hope you can find people who don't go along with that and who realize, how can God be for something that violates love? How can God be for something that traps you in abuse? That's not God, the true God. So commitment to sacrifice everything so an abuser has total power, how can that be in line with love your neighbor as yourself? So it's just a very prevalent idea that's a form of actually spiritual abuse. Number 10, if I leave, I'll regret it because they'll fall apart or I'll be alone forever. So there's a fear-based thing going on here. So if I leave, I'll regret it. I'm afraid I'm going to have regrets. I'm afraid they're going to fall apart. I'm afraid I'll never have another relationship. Fear, fear, fear. And then there's often a guilt thing. If they fall apart, I will feel it's my fault. That if I had stayed with them, then they wouldn't have fallen apart. And so that guilt, that will just destroy me. So I'm going to stay to prevent feeling guilt because I'm pretty sure they're going to fall apart. So there's a codependent enmeshment that I'm responsible for their decisions going on there. All of that is tied into some shame that my worth, my value comes from rescuing them. My worth, my value comes from helping them and keeping them on the straight and narrow. So let's start with the fear. What you realize is if you didn't give in to the fear and got through it and left, the imagined fear didn't happen. It wasn't as bad as you feared it would be. So fear is not an accurate guide of the future, is what I want you to see. Secondly, you can try to keep them on the straight and narrow, but if they truly want to change, they'll change whether you're there or not. There's lots of resources available to them. They don't need you. Often you are actually enabling them, preventing them from changing, enabling them to stay in old behaviors because you keep taking away all the consequences. So please understand that if you leave, yes, they might fall apart, but that could be a good thing. That could take them to a bottom, to a place of pain where they actually then seek out help because there is plenty of help available. So it is not dependent on you, it's dependent on them. Lie number 11. You're in an abusive relationship. People try to get you to look at it and say that you shouldn't be in this, get out of it. And you go, that's just how relationships are. And really what you are doing in your mind is you're normalizing toxicity. So you're minimizing it. You're saying, yeah, that's what everybody goes through. And so that could come from growing up in complex trauma where you didn't have healthy relationship models. And so your relationship today is kind of similar to those. And you go, yeah, that's just how relationships are. But you've never been exposed to healthy. And you've just adopted all the coping patterns of your parents' relationship or your family, the dynamics. And so you go, yeah, that's just how relationships are. But please understand this. This is not what healthy relationships look like. Yes, all relationships have hard times, but healthy relationships resolve them in healthy ways. Healthy relationships communicate. They meet each other's needs. There's give and take to find out what's best for both. There's working through conflict with respect, with a working towards a solution. There's accepting each other, connecting with each other, being present to each other through the hard times. So don't say all relationships are like this when you're in hard times. Yes, all relationships have hard times, but healthy relationships respond very differently than unhealthy. Lie 12. I can't make it on my own. That comes again to me from complex trauma. So it could be the fear of abandonment. I don't want to be alone. I'm scared to death to be alone. Or learned helplessness. I don't know the tools to learn how to do my finances and do all the adult things in life. Or all the shame that just says I'm just not good enough. I just can't do it. I'm a failure. So there's all kinds of things that come out of complex trauma that can set a person up to feel defeated before they even try. But what I want you to also see is that if you've been in an abusive relationship, there's often been very high control over you, and you've been gaslit, made to feel incompetent, made to feel you can't do anything right, made to feel you'd never make it without me, and you've slowly believed that. You've been gaslit to believe you're incompetent and helpless. And then partly you've been cut off from resources. And so understand you are not helpless. Understand there are many resources available. If you find resources and you learn tools, you can make it. Doesn't mean it's not going to be hard for a while, but it is doable. Lie 13. Oh, it's not that bad. And this is a common minimizing thing to avoid being totally honest about what's really happening. And that's where people go, others have it worse than me, so mine's not that bad. The bottom line, the truth is, any abuse is bad. It does great harm to you. It does great harm to the children. You probably wouldn't allow your children to experience that abuse. You'd immediately go, no, that's bad. So you're saying it's bad for your children, but it's not that bad for you. All abuse is bad. And so we have to quit minimizing and be able to say, hey, I'm being abused. That's unacceptable. A line in the sand. Not going to stay there. Lie 14, the final lie. If I leave, it's going to hurt the kids. The kids need two parents. And so my response to that is, when you see children in a relationship that's where there's abuse or a narcissist, we always hope there's going to be a bad option and a good option. So if I leave, it's going to be a good option. If I stay, it's a bad option. And you go in this situation. No, if I leave, it's going to be hard. If I stay, it's hard. There's no good options. So what you're not looking for is a good option versus a bad option. You're looking out of the two bad options, which is the better option. And so what I want you to understand is that staying looks like the better option in the short term. But please understand, in the long term, staying is taking a greater and greater toll on the children. They are going more into complex trauma because they sense mom and dad are unsafe. There's no security there. And it's driving them into further and further maladaptations that are going to haunt them for years to come. If you leave, yes, it's going to be hard on the children. They're going to miss their parent. They're going to go through grief. They're going to go through lots of different things. but you can help them through that. You can help them process it and deal with it in healthy ways, and they can get to a safer place, and they can get to a better life, and it's going to get a whole lot better eventually. So again, think long term, not short term. So what do we do to heal? We got all these lies that are guiding us and keeping us in very unhealthy relationships. So again, please understand that as long as you believe a lie, it tends to pull you in an unhealthy direction. As long as you believe a lie, it's going to keep you in a place that is hurting you and others. Secondly, recognizing the lies is an important start. And that's why I've done this talk, so that you can go, oh yeah, I believe that. But then take it further. Begin to ask yourself, why did I believe that lie? Where did it come from? Why was I attracted to this person who became an abuser? Why did I stay so long? Begin to look at your own deeper issues. So the issue isn't that just that you believed a lie. The issue is that you got some deep trauma, shame, codependency that set you up to believe a lie. So you can't just replace the lie with the truth if you don't deal with the deep shame, codependency stuff. Thirdly, reframe the lie. So if you were believing it's not that bad, reframe it with, if I have to question whether it's abuse, it's already damaging. If you believe they'll change if I love them, reframe it. I deserve a relationship where love doesn't hurt. If you are believing I'm the problem, replace it with no one deserves to be mistreated, period. If you believe the lie I can't leave, reframe it. I may feel scared, but I'm not powerless. And then begin to go, okay, how do I get out of this? What steps do I need to take to change my life, to get to a healthier place, to get free of this relationship? So you might see the end result looks like a very big step. I need to get out of this. But that's too big a step. So break it into smaller things that you can begin to do. I can talk to somebody. I can begin to look for a place to stay, a job, houses, all on the sly. I can get support and just begin to do all of these little steps to begin to take control of your life back, to get yourself to safety. Now that means you're going to have to walk into the unknown, and that's going to be scary, but keep bringing yourself back to focusing on the actionable steps. And so reach out for support. There's so much support available. Get therapy so you're dealing with your own deeper issues that set you up to be vulnerable to these kind of relationships. And then keep fresh in your mind why you're doing it. Because at times you're going to second guess yourself. You're going to doubt. Others are going to say, why don't you just stay? Keep in mind, I'm doing it because I deserve love. I'm doing it because the children deserve love and security and safety. So again, I've referred to the book Narcissistic Abuse by Vanessa Reiser that just gives very helpful steps for people who are trying to break free of all the lies that have kept them in narcissistic abuse.